You know, when you're watching a film and you can just feel that it thinks it's saying something really, really deep and profound. Like every frame is soaked in metaphors, every line is delivered like it belongs in a poetry book, and the background score won't shut up about how emotional this is all supposed to be. But you don't feel anything. You're just sitting there like, okay, but what's the actual emotion? What exactly am I supposed to feel here? Yeah. आंखों की गुस्ताखियाँ, the new Hindi film starring Vikrant Massey and debutant Shanaya Kapoor, is exactly that film. You know what? Let's just rip the band-aid off. Aankhon Ki Gustakiyan is not a good film. It wants to be a slow burn romantic drama drenched in poetry and longing, but what it ends up being is 2 hours of beautifully lit, emotionally hollow chaos. It's like someone watched Lotera and said, what if we did exactly this but without the nuance or the tension or even the writing? Let's start with the plot, or rather, the idea of a plot. The film, for people who don't know, is inspired by Ruskin Bond's short story, The Eyes Have It. And here's the official plot rundown. Jahan, played by Vikrant Massey, is a visually impaired musician traveling on a train from Delhi to Missouri. Sabha, played by Shanaya Kapoor, a theatre artist preparing for a blind character, blindfolds herself to practice. They meet on a train, develop a connection via conversation, touch, and music without realizing that only one of them is actually blind. But the story doesn't really go anywhere. It's stuck in this loop of aesthetic shots, dialogues that sound like rejected Instagram captions, and people staring at each other like they're in a perfume ad. And not a good one at that. That being said, and this is the most important thing, it's not a total disaster. There are some things that actually work. First of all, I think the music album is genuinely solid. Like, if you told me this was a Bansali soundtrack, I would believe you. Tracks are very well composed and carry way more emotion than most of the actual scenes in the movie. If the film was even half as moving as its songs, we'd be having a much different conversation right now. And then there's Shanaya Kapoor. Look, no one was expecting her to carry the film, and no, she does not. But honestly, she's not the worst thing here. You can see the effort she's trying, and in some scenes, especially the more restrained ones, she actually lands. She has screen presence, she's not entirely unwatchable at this point. And in a film this lost in its own aesthetics, just being watchable is already a win in my books. Vikrant Massey does what he can, but even he seems like he's acting through a filter. There's only so much he can do when the screenplay gives him a grand total of 4 facial expressions to work with. You almost feel bad for him at one point. Like he signed up thinking this would be his Burfi, but ended up stuck in someone's college short with a 40 crore budget. Visually, the film tries to be poetic. Golden hour, everything, silk curtains blowing in slow motion, rain drenched confession scenes. It looks really nice, but looking nice isn't enough when nothing is going on underneath. You can't keep throwing metaphors at the screen and hope the audience will feel something. The premise, I have to strangely say, is actually pretty solid. Two people meeting by accident, neither seeing things the same way, both literally and metaphorically. That could have been sweet, deep, even poetically sad. But the problem is pacing and the emotional weight. The first half, as most critics would point out, starts with charm. The banter, the scenery, the chemistry work really well. But once they hit misery, the story kind of drifts. Scenes are repeated, tension fizzles, and the film has an identity crisis. Is it a drama, a romance, or is it just a mood video at this point? By the end, it doesn't feel like these characters have actually gone anywhere, not emotionally, not narratively, and I think that's the real disconnect. They show the blind poet, but they don't make us see his actual pain. By the time the film reaches its emotional climax, if you can even call it that, you've either turned out completely or just started making up your own story just to stay awake. Plot wise, I think Aankhon Ki Gustakiyan had promise, an emotionally intimate setup of about perception and connection, but it unravels once the story widens, the pacing slows, the emotion either flatlines or overplays itself, and the film just loses its way. You go into it expecting a short story vibe, tight, emotional, soulful. Instead, you get a meander. Beautiful visuals and good music help you stay engaged. Shanaya is not the worst thing, Vikrant really tries, but the narrative just never deepens beyond the surface level. The film is like a soft focus stream with nothing really in focus. It wants to be intense, soulful, even heartbreaking, but it ends up being a very pretty slideshow of two good looking people having the most non urgent love story in all of history. Still, if you're into sad songs, aesthetic cinematography, and watching debutantes try to prove they're more than just a last name, this might not be a complete waste. Just keep your expectations at sea level. Concluding, I just want to say Aankhon Ki Gustakiyan is a film that really tries to be poetry in motion, but it neither has the motion nor the poetry.